boy, just just having a little New England eye-opener blend right here. Holy shit. Yes, that's exactly what it's called. I know, it sounds like a sex position, but it's not. In New England, there's actually coffee. It's called the New England eye-opener, almost as good as the Devil's Brew. Really good. Let me have a sip here. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing a jingle about it. I did that on this past week's episode of Prime episode of Sovereign Tech. I just, I was having some Diet Coke, and boy, I broke out into a little late 80s, early 90s classic jingle there about Diet Coke, and I won't do it again. But anyway, apparently some people loved it, and I'm glad. So I've got a hell of a show for you. First off, you may notice that this is one of the rare occasions where I am doing a Q&A from within the studio. And I, always happy to do that. I love bringing, really that great sound quality. It's not always possible. Even though we're trying, Stephanie and I are trying to make it possible, to where we can do that. One of the ways that you can help, you're already patrons and you're already doing enough, but if you are curious, wishlist.zog.ninja, that takes you to the Amazon wish list where there's various equipment that we can, that we need to take a lot of our stuff to the next level. So something to think about. And then of course, there's always stuff.sexandsciencehour.com. And speaking of Sex and Science Hour, I know a lot of people, boy, here's a question right out of the gate for your, little Patreon only Wednesday Q&A. A lot of people are wondering, how long is the season break for season 3? Because we just released the season 3 finale of Sex and Science Hour. Stephanie said it's going to be about a month. Understand, like that, I with Sex and Science Hour, I pretty much like show up and talk, and like, I share stories and all this different stuff, but, really Stephanie is the genius. And I mean that in every sense of the term, the genius behind that show. She makes it all go round and round. So, her call. So I think she was saying it's going to be about a month. I think that's what we described. So, but we'll be back for season 4. Don't worry. It'll be a good time. And I know she has a lot of great things in mind and planned for it. So I guess I'll open this up. There was one question I got on Twitter, which kind of speaks to something we talked about on the season finale for Sex and Science Hour. And that was, have I done any Sovereign Tech meetups, or have I met up with Sovereign Tech listeners and all of this? And the person asked that on Twitter, what are my thoughts about it? So, okay. So I've hinted at this sort of thing in the past. First off, I've met a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners, actually. Like, I've met them personally, be it at conferences that I've been to, or they come to me. In fact, I've met 2 incredible Sovereign Tech listeners. You're all great, but I met a couple of actual patrons even. And they're very kind of, we went out to dinner, did the whole thing. And I can think of recently 2 guys in particular that it was such an honor to meet both of them, both top-notch acts, and who you are. And it was within like the past year, I guess I'll say. I don't have, it's not like I get emails all the time where people are like, hey, I'm going to be in this area, you want to come meet? Usually if I say that I'm going to be, like if I say ahead of time that I'm going to be somewhere on such and such dates, often enough, like I'll get messages or, direct messages or emails from people saying, hey, if you're in town, let me know. We'd love to meet up with you. And that's happened a few times too. And that's always nice. The thing I really love, and this has happened a few times, I love it when, okay, so a couple. One is when a person actually ends up going to a business run by a Sovereign Tech listener, and that person that's going to the business is also a Sovereign Tech listener, and suddenly they hear Sovereign Tech playing or something like that. That's awesome. So like when those random chance meetings and all that between Sovereign Tech listeners themselves happen, that's really cool. Another one was that 2 listeners, a guy and a gal, actually met at they're at a coffee shop or something, and same deal, like the person had, I forget, I don't think they were looking at the other person's screen. Maybe there was audio playing or something, but they noticed that, like, they heard me. I guess I have somewhat of a distinctive voice or tone or something, but they heard me, and the person's like, you're a fan of Sovereign Tech? And like, I guess the guy kind of like, woo, you know, got all excited and everything, which whatever, you know, I mean, thank you. And they're like a item now. They're in a full on, they've been in a relationship for, I think, almost a year or two, maybe, last time I checked. So really honored by that. I actually got a message from a guy this week saying that his love life has been going through the roof since he started listening to Sovereign Tech, just in the past few months. You know, and he said, it's like, is it a coincidence? He says correlation, definitely. And I was like, yeah, thank you so much. I'm really honored by that. So like the cooler thing is when Sovereign Tech fans meet each other and they didn't know, right? Like they don't know who they are. That's really cool. And it's one of the fortuitous things about Sovereign Tech that its listenership goes far beyond, you know, kind of the social circles, I guess you could say I started this whole game in, you know, that being, you know, libertarian, anarchist, anarcho-capitalists and all that, circles. So, I've also, you know, I also got a DM about, you know, a woman that met another woman. They're both Sovereign Tech fans. I mean, it's really cool. I sometimes, all right. I've got great questions to get into. We're going to talk about money. We're going to talk about Netflix. I've got some great stuff to get into. Let's talk about this little bit of business here. I remember, and I opened up a Sovereign Tech Prime episode with this because like a guy sent me an email saying that his wife, you know, that his wife, like, you know, doesn't get tech, hates, you know, like can't listen to any of the tech shows that he listens to, but she'll listen to Sovereign Tech. And like, and just the way he was describing it, I don't think he realized what he was saying. All right. Because like, it really sounded like, you know, maybe his wife was getting a little hot around the collar. I don't know. Woo. All right. So anyway, I'm so glad that, you know, people like that this show brings people together, that it heats up people's lives, etc. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how honored I am by that. Okay. You know, I mean, really, in fact, there's a question I've been wanting to get to. I'm not going to do it here because I have great subjects I want to get into. Maybe I'll do it as a separate episode because, I got asked the question of, you know, is Sovereign Tech, you know, 5 years ago in 2012, when I started Sovereign Tech, is it where I thought it would be? Or if it's not, where did I expect it to be, et cetera? And, you know, I'd love to talk about that. But I just, you know, I want to say, like, and I say this all the time, and you know, I've gotten emails and messages from patrons that have addressed this sort of thing. And I've read them to you on this, you know, on Q&As and wherever else. But yeah, like, I started the show because what I wanted to exist in the world didn't exist. Like, it's not out there. The closest thing to what I want, you know, to what I want out of an informative and entertaining podcast, you know, something that's in my ears, the closest thing out there is Security Now with Steve Gibson. And the thing is that, and I say this with absolute respect to both Leo Laporte and Steve Gibson, especially Steve Gibson, who is a personal hero. I've patterned so much of what I do after his you know, his incredible success. Not that I've reached that level or, you know, that kind of success in any way, but, you know, I've really patterned after him. But I say this with all respect, but like, the show's not sexy, and it's not going to be, because the Twit network doesn't really, you know, kind of allow for that, which is unfortunate. But whatever. I mean, well, not that Leo won't talk about porn or whatever, but I mean, they won't like kind of live it up. And admittedly, they're older guys. There is nothing wrong in this world with being older dudes. Okay. Nothing wrong with being silver foxes and whatever. And frankly, by the looks of things, Steve Gibson's probably going to live forever. I mean, that guy's so goddamn healthy. And I mean, when you go to grc.com, his website, you know, like it's remarkable the amount of personal research he's done and quantifying and everything, so that, yeah, you know, he can be living a pretty good long life. But you know, they're both effectively in their 60s, I think. And yeah, so the show's not sexy, right? It's very informative. Steve Gibson always, you know, with Security Now, always does, or not always, but often will do like science fiction picks, right? He'll mix in some geeky shit and conversation, you know, within these very deadly serious, you know, security topics, you know, exploits, or, you know, all these different things. and he'll also, bring in recommendations of things to do, solutions, the whole thing. I mean, security now is, like maybe 75, 80% of what I wanted Sovereign Tech to be. I mean, even like the theme music for security now is like this kind of spy music, right? Because that's sort of what you're living up. And I know Steve Gibson's a huge James Bond fan like myself. And I've had the pleasure of having conversations with him too, to some degree on this stuff. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's the reason I started this whole thing, is because what I want, wasn't out there. And I wanted the thing, and I'm glad that this is kind of working. Not that it's, it's kind of a byproduct. It's not like my only intent, but yeah, I wanted something that sexied things up. I wanted something to exist. I wanted a podcast out there. I wanted something that was fun, that could be serious, that was very, I hope, and judging by the emails and messages I get, by the thousands and thousands, something is very informative and, and very helpful for people. But like as a side product, or as a byproduct, I want like people to, start enjoying life, and just without mercy, going after happiness. Going after, like, saying, yeah, it's okay for me to be happy, and God damn it, I'm going to go get it. And so when I hear about people, finding love and all that stuff, I mean, what greater aspect of happiness is there? There isn't one, not in the human condition anyway. And so I'm touched. Like, and I am so honored when I hear that sort of thing. And, I'd be lying if I didn't say that. Yeah, I always kind of hope that the show would kind of inspire that sort of shit. And I'm glad it does. I'm really glad it does. So, and you don't hear that much on other podcasts that they do that. And I think part of it is because it's like these podcasts, it's not in their genetic makeup to, like really, I think inspire, like really, I really don't, I know there's podcasts that are all supposed to be about like helping people and all this shit. Right. But I don't really hear much in the way of podcasts that like really inspire, people to do something, to make some kind of change, and to explain, very much what the benefits are. I mean, it's the nice thing about a tech show is that you can quantify what you're describing, like when you say, yeah, if you use Tor, it's going to do this, right? I mean, I'm just giving that as an example. It could be, far more interesting subjects, but you can quantify the improvement in your life, and that makes my life, that's good, because that makes my life easy. It's not like there's no debate. It's like, yeah, Tor will make things more secure. You can argue about the degrees, but it is going to make things, just mathematically more secure. Bottom line. So it's nice that I get to talk with that kind of confidence. Anyway, I'm running my mouth. I'm going all over tons of stuff. We're 12 minutes in and I haven't even gotten to the first question yet. But just really honored that so many people, to have met so many people. And would I do, this was the original question. Would I do Sovereign Tech meetups? Absolutely. Stephanie talked about on the season finale of season 3 of Sex and Science Hour, doing Sex and Science Hour meetups. And I know people were excited about that. Would I do Sovereign Tech ones? Yeah, I'd love to. I'm not necessarily in the position to do that right now, like, financially and just, overall allowance to be able to do that, to afford to do that, time and other things. But I'd love to do it. The best thing I could think of doing, and I've thought about this for a while, is kind of hijacking, another event and just having like a mini Sovereign Tech conference within another event. And if I ever decide to do that, well, I'll let you know. and I'll make it happen. And fortunately, I have a degree of acquaintance, if not friendship, with some people that are involved in event organizing. And maybe they'd be willing to kind of, turn the other, turn the other way, when they see a huge, neon sign go up that says, Sovereign Tech fans right here, baby. So anyway, whatever. I don't know when that'll be. It certainly won't be in the next, I can definitely say it wouldn't be within the next few months, probably not even the next year. So, but yeah, Sex and Science Hour meetups, Sovereign Tech meetups. I mean, those could be, co-joining anyway. It doesn't really matter, but okay. So now 14 minutes in there, I did, that was a genuine question on Twitter. So I answered it. Again, I'm just so excited for when Sovereign Tech fans meet each other. I mean, I'm crazy excited to meet Sovereign Tech, fans as well and listeners. I mean, I think that's awesome. I always enjoy it. But at the same time, the thing that really, really gives me, a nice positive, little kick on the inside is when I hear those stories about, ladies finding ladies, people finding love and whatever else. I think that's fantastic. So, okay. Let's get into this. I teased a bit of what this was going to be about, and certainly the first one. Now, this is going to be some controversial shit. Actually, this week, I can tell you, because some of it's already recorded, you're going to hear a lot of controversial shit. And the other fortunate thing that I hear from many, many patrons and Sovereign Tech listeners in general is that they don't agree with me on everything, but they just keep on listening and they still love the content. Awesome. I am not the judge of your life, but let me just say this. I think you are an incredibly enlightened human being because you can listen to something and, take away from it what you love or just enjoy it, for its tone and for its structure and maybe not even so much for, what gets said and all of these different things. That is really something for a person to be able to do. So you might hear some things this week, and I have guests. I'll tell you that right now. You may hear some things that are going to shake your core a touch, but I implore you to listen with open ears. Okay. And dig it. And if you have issue with it, all you got to do is message or email me and we can cover the response. So anyway, all right, let's do this. Let's get into this shit. So the question boiled down to, I actually had like 3 different ways in which this was worded. So I'm just going to boil it down quick. Also, just for time constraints. And that is this has to do with, do you imagine ever a future where there is effectively no money? Like money is not a thing. It's not, it's not the economic tool. It's not the medium of exchange, the instrument of representation for items, etc. Can I imagine that? Oof. So I can imagine it. Okay. Like I could see a path to where that sort of thing is possible. Now be very clear that, and this is why I'm kind of boiling it down. Okay. There is a huge difference between money and currency. Okay. Like those are, in my opinion, 2 different things. I cannot imagine a world without currency. I can imagine a world without money itself. So to explain, money is literally like a thing, is like $1, or it could be Bitcoin or something like that. Something that is used, again, it's that medium of exchange. But at the same time, what it really is, let me back up just a touch. Money is, just in my opinion, without question. Okay. And I know I have a lot of different anarchist types and a lot of different ideological types that listen to the show, some of which do not hold favorable feelings about money. And I understand those and I respect those. Okay. But let's be clear about this. And even Karl Marx would say so. Money is one of the greatest inventions humanity has ever come up with. Straight up. Like it's one of the greatest technologies, and it is a technology. I mean, it's remarkable just how much really that money allowed for tremendous growth and tremendous advancement with humanity, as far as advancement, meaning I guess I should say like technological advancement and some other things. Okay. Now, I mean, people want to gauge, advance, like the old things, like the standard of living is great, but the quality of life sucks. Money has allowed for an incredible increase in the standard of living. How about that? Okay. That's the great invention. And I say that because, so for example, all right, imagine a caveman, okay, who has, like maybe, I mean, you still had, look, understand, even in the Paleolithic, even in ancient human history, it is abundantly clear, just from cave paintings alone. all right, that that the concept of the division of labor, that certain people within a tribe or whatever else did certain tasks and were better at certain tasks, and other ones did other tasks. It was not, not everybody, even then, really, not everybody was living up to kind of Robert Heinlein's dream that, specialization is for ants, right? That's the old Heinlein quote, which I actually love that quote, but whatever. Okay, you still see that kind of that division of labor. Now, within that division of labor at the time, without, say, in the world without money, okay, without something like $1 or gold coins or something along those lines. At that time, and you can talk to me about Charles Eisenstein's work. I'm fully aware of it, and I might discuss it a bit here. But anyway, at the time, like say you were, I don't know, a great like hut builder or something along those lines, or some kind of builder of housing, okay, or you were some kind of artist, and we know artists were even a big deal even in Paleolithic times, even 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 years ago, and even before then. And you would perhaps exchange, not necessarily, isn't exactly barter, but you would effectively exchange what this, like, say you were the artist type caveman. How about that for the analogy? You would exchange that. And hopefully, with that exchange, you would get some woolly mammoth, meat, right? So, from the hunters within the tribe, that was their kind of, specialization. Now, the problem here is, and you could say, and I would even, argue this to a degree that, well, the tribe, like, the hunters would gladly share their meat anyway. They didn't necessarily need to exchange it for some kind of like little art of like a Venus goddess or something, with a fellow caveman or cave woman. You can kind of make that argument, and I get that, but let's continue on with the analogy. Kind of one of the issues here is that, okay, well, how much is that little goddess, statue or whatever that you made, this little goddess creation of yours, little rock creation or something that this caveman made, how much woolly mammoth meat is that worth? Like, I mean, there'd be, is it even worth any? Like, to some degree, the person that's not actually hunting or, that is going after the necessities, like perhaps the tribal artist or whatever they end up having to do, they're sort of at the mercy of the people that go after the necessities of living, that being eating or, whatever it requires to survive, as a human being, and say in the Paleolithic. So when money gets invented, the interesting thing is that actually frees up a lot of people from, kind of being beholden to, to the barter system, to like, okay, well, I'll give you this little Venus goddess if you, give me some mammoth meat or something. Instead you end up with this really incredible tool, which is what money is. It's a tool. You end up with this incredible tool that allows you to, to put like certain values on thing, and you can earn this tool that can then be representative of everything. I mean, that's the amazing thing about money, right? Is that money can literally represent anything that it needs to, and it's just, it's, like in Star Trek, you have the universal translator, right? That can translate any language. Money is the universal translator for resources, commodities, property, all that different stuff, because it can represent anything. I mean, it really is an incredible invention. Okay, regardless of how you feel about it now, or what has become of the human condition, due to its prevalence and emphasis on money, regardless, like, it is genius. It really, really is. And I mean, it very much is. I think that might be the best analogy for it. It's like, it's the universal translator for things instead of languages. So it's a powerful, it's a super powerful tool. Now, there can be issues within that. All right. Because then when suddenly, money becomes like the most important thing. I mean, there's definitely a lot. Money can really skew reality, and it can skew, what a person actually needs in their lives. Because if the pursuit becomes, I mean, and please don't quote me the Bible saying, the love of money is the root of all evil, right? No, no, that's not true at all. And I did get the verse right, by the way. You know, Ayn Rand, she kind of butchered that from the King James version. But anyway, you know, no, it's not that, but it does kind of sound similar to where, like, when the pursuit of money becomes the goal, instead of the pursuit of like actual creativity and, you know, or what Ayn Rand actually herself would call productive achievement, and which is part of the heroic life, you know, in her definition. Yeah, I mean, then, you know, you end up with, I think, some unhealthy attitudes towards life. Sure. You know, and I'm not saying it's bad to want money. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying, let's be clear that money does bring certain challenges, you know, along with it, as great as an invention as it is. So can I imagine a world without money? Yeah, because it's existed before. You know, was it a great world? No. Does a world without money necessarily mean that it would be some kind of primitive existence? Not at all. I've brought up the example a few times. I brought it up on a Patreon Q&A. I've also brought it up on actually back when Sovereign Tech Prime episodes had Q&As had an entire Q&A segment built into them. I remember talking about this because I got a very similar question. And I brought up the Incas, okay, which for their time, you know, we're talking a couple thousand years ago, if not longer, the Incas, all right, you know, Peru, all that whole area, they were incredibly advanced for their time, incredibly advanced. They're by any metric, you know, they are what, especially again at that time, would be considered an advanced civilization. They had it all right. You know, they were bringing, you know, one of the top metrics in anthropology for an advanced civilization is, do they bring water to the desert? What they mean by that is, you know, do they have a degree of plumbing? Do they have aqueducts? Do they have this sort of stuff, right? Like Rome is one of the, you know, original advanced, very advanced civilizations, because they had plumbing and, you know, and they literally did bring water to the desert. I mean, that's where the, you know, the whole phrase comes from. The Incas did something very similar. Now, the interesting thing though, is that they didn't have money. They didn't even have a market, like none of this. Everything how stuff got paid for. You know, it wasn't necessarily communism either, but how in the Incan Empire things got paid for was effectively with the time tax. Is that, okay, yep, there's plenty of there's food in the food stores for everybody, but everybody, you know, it was like a worker's conscription. Everybody had to work a certain amount of time every, you know, week or month or whatever it shaped up, unless you were part of the, you know, the monarchy of the empire, then you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. But then really, you know, you were keeping an eye on a bunch of other things. Okay. But again, understand that technologically, by their by the standards of the day, it was a very advanced civilization. Now, they still had some degree of money because there were outposts where they would trade with other empires, other tribes, groups, and all this different stuff. So even then, even though within the empire itself, money was not a thing, it just didn't exist. And they were thriving. And oh yes, they were fucking thriving. You know, yeah, when you're dealing with other people, well, you kind of, you know, you have to have some kind of medium of exchange, whatever that ended up becoming. And that kind of hints at why I say that, yeah, I can see a world without money, but not a world without currency. Okay. And even within that, within the Incan Empire, you had the time tax. Time was the currency. Okay, you see my point? It's not money. It's not a dollar that you change hands with. It's not a gold coin that you exchange. It's not a medium of exchange. Not really. It is, but it is a currency. Okay, not medium of exchange isn't something physically that you kind of hand over. Okay, so yeah, so I mean, so you have the Incan Empire. So yeah, there can be what, you know, and who knows where the Incan Empire could have gone, as far as what actually brought it down. That's still somewhat of a mystery. If the issue was an economic issue of some kind, or that the Incans were starving or something like that, we'd have some evidence of that, and the evidence isn't there. Okay, like, I mean, there'd be something. Whatever happened quickly. It was not a slow degradation. There was absolutely no sign that because of the economic model that the Incan Empire existed under, that they, you know, that's what brought it all down. It's just not. And again, they were thriving and they were developing literal new technologies. So, you know, I'm just saying, there was a time where I consider myself an ANCAP. Okay. And even then I knew as an armchair historian, I knew the story of the Incas, and I was like, no, this is bullshit when people say that, oh yeah, without money, there's no, without the market, that there's no, there's no innovation, there's no advancing of civilization or the species or anything like that. That's horseshit, because there's historical examples where absolutely it happened in every way that matters. So, I mean, yeah, okay, so they didn't develop the car. Well, give them a little more time, for fuck's sake. The Romans didn't invent the car either, though they did get close. There was that one guy who made a steam engine. But anyway, so now here's the thing. So to speak more on this, the idea that they're, a world without money, but not a world without currency. Let's talk about this. One of the best examples that people really get into, that they like to shine on about, oh yeah, we can get beyond money, is of course Star Trek, right? Like science fiction. People always look to science fiction, and it's a good thing to do, to look at science fiction, because science fiction very much is a play of ideas. It is the arena of ideas. In my opinion, because of that, it is the most important literary, not just literary, but media genre that humanity has, because it allows us to explore what can be, and that's very important. I mean, that everybody does that. I mean, that's the nature of business. It's the nature of so many things, is thinking, cost benefit analysis or something, right? So science fiction is very important. Anyway, so Star Trek, of course, is probably one of the more popular. Of course, there's the Culture series as well, but one of the most popular ones where there isn't any money. Now, the fun thing is that, so here's the beauty of Star Trek, and why I think it's actually a very valid thing to look at and to use as an analysis for when you are trying to describe potential futures. Okay, like the questions being asked here. Could you see a future without money? The reason that Star Trek is such a great example is because Star Trek very quickly came up with, well, not so quickly. I mean, it took a few decades, but by the time of the Next Generation, by 1987, how about that? Like Star Trek 4, Next Generation, all that, you started to get a cohesive canon code. Like there were rules that writers had to play by, within this universe. And so, once you had kind of this foundational language of Star Trek, effectively, that writers had to go by, then, yeah, I mean, like, really, you had effectively a culture that was designed, with Star Trek. And that culture was able to explore on screen, was able to explore a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways of doing things, and explore them in a very methodical, and I think a logical way, because of the internal logic of the Star Trek canon itself. I love the quote from William Shatner. William Shatner was asked, I think this is back in like 2009 when the new Star Trek movie was coming out. And everybody was like, oh, it's going to be a rehash, a revamp. This is, they're rebooting everything. This is terrible. They're killing off the old Star Trek canon, kind of like what everybody thought happened with, or what did happen with Star Wars in 2013. But of course, this is a few years before. Of course, we found out that no, it's just adding on to the canon. It's not taking away from the canon at all. In fact, of course, we have Star Trek Discovery coming out, which exists within the old canon, right? Within what they call the Prime universe. There's the Prime timeline and the Kelvin timeline, right? The Kelvin timeline's the Abrams movies. So, but they were asking Shatner about this, about how important is the Star Trek canon, and his answer was perfect. He said, it's incredibly important. In fact, it's the most important thing. It is the foundation of the universe. And he was talking about our universe, saying like that everything, I mean, he was kind of being in jest in saying that, like without the Star Trek canon, our universe would literally just fall apart, right? Like it's the Bible, it's Torah or something, and like I said, he's being joculant, but there's a thing to it, because I mean, the Star Trek canon, when you consider just how many advances or how many things that Star Trek kind of created internally for itself that ended up becoming real world objects. I mean, it's insane to think about, not just the communicator and the smartphone, right? I mean, there's a billion other things that is pretty remarkable to see. So Star Trek is a great thing, is a great social structure to analyze, a great culture really to analyze and to look at, alternatives and how to work within it. Because again, it has its own internal logic, that being the Star Trek canon, the writers' Bibles, and all this different stuff that usually you had to stick by, or you'd get some shit. You'd get shit from the Star Trek fans, and you don't want that, because then they turn stuff off, or they give you bad PR, and none of which you want. So anyway, what you notice, because again, once you hit the Next Generation and onward, except for Enterprise, which is, that's a prequel. What you get is, it's this world without money, right? And there's constant, there's the episode, was from season 1. I think it might even been in the finale for season 1 of the Next Generation, where, Picard gives a very firm dressing down to a recently unfrozen, 20th century, capitalist investor, right? Talking about how that's money's not the driving force in our lives anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And he mentions it in First Contact as well. Okay. All right, fine. So money's not your driving force. Then what is the driving force of humanity within Star Trek? Well, it's very clear what it is. It's reputation. Reputation is everything. Like, people are still going for, even in the original series, you got to understand, there's a difference really between the original series and then everything that would kind of come after the Next Generation, as far as ideologies go. But you'd see it often in that a lot of the possessions that people would kind of carry on would be things like medals that they were awarded. You would have, titles that people would go for, scientific achievement, but recognition for the scientific achievement, the papers, novels that they would write, all these different things that, it was all about reputation. Reputation is the currency of the Federation within Star Trek. And so again, here's kind of a play on, okay, what could the future look like without money? Well, yeah. All right. There's no money, but then there is still currency. There is still some kind of driving force, for people. There is still something that a goal, a certain achievement that people are reaching for. And it's a social currency, really, it's reputation. And, can I ever imagine a future without that, without at least that, without social currency? No, I can't possibly, I don't see it, because if there's ever a time, the only future I could see where social currency doesn't fucking matter anymore. Okay. Where reputation doesn't matter and all these different things. I'm just going to guess that humanity has become gods, like literal gods with omnipotence and omniscience and all the rest. That's the only way I could imagine that at least the currency of reputation, which is kind of time and reputation are sort of the last refuge of currency, I guess. And, if those aren't part of it anymore, then that's the only way I could imagine that they wouldn't be. The human condition would be so drastically changed. Again, we would effectively be gods. That's the only way I could picture it. And I want to bring up a couple points on that. It's interesting just how, and you can see this, with what's happening in the blockchain, in the cryptocurrency space with Bitcoin and everything. How important is it, say with Open Bazaar and all these different, new types of markets and everything? What's the problem that they're trying to lick? Often it's not that money's the problem. Bitcoin's got that licked pretty good. Okay. What they're trying to solve is reputation, trust and reputation. So really, what's the currency here? What's the currency? Or maybe I don't want to say that it's money, because I like to think of money as a very tangible thing, as to where your reputation is not something that you can exactly quantify and write down and invent necessarily, right? Yeah, you can invent. I get it. You can make things look like something else online and all the shit, but you're not going to invent a device that suddenly makes everybody on planet Earth, sends out some kind of wave or beam or something that says this person's trustworthy. Really, that device is just never going to exist. Okay. So I don't see, reputation and things like that to be like a physical thing. All right. You might want to show it off with gold stars, which I think is ridiculous, but that's what Amazon works with, right? For that sort of stuff. But you see just how important that even to some degree, money can be meaningless. Money can be not meaningless, but money could be, like one of its major issues is if there isn't an attachment within the medium of exchange to some kind of trust and reputation, that things fall apart. Like that you're hesitant to use the medium of exchange. So what's the most important thing? Is it the money or is it the trust and reputation? I would argue that, as we're seeing new markets try and get created, like in the cryptocurrency space, I would argue that trust and reputation is the real currency. It's the real transmitter. It's the thing that actually incentivizes the transmitter, not so much the dollar amount. Not so much the value of like the monetary value, but actually, okay, am I trusting this transaction, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, even Bitcoin to some degree kind of solved this. It's like, okay, well, how do we trust that the transaction actually happened? So again, money, fine. Money's great, blah, blah, blah. Or you know what I mean? Okay. Like, all right, you got money figured out, but we got to figure out how do we bake in trust and reputation? So I'd argue that that's the most important thing. And I would argue that, yeah, it is possible to get to a future where trust and reputation is the only currency left, where you get rid of perhaps the middleman of the medium of exchange and you lay it down to, or, you break it down to where, okay, what is the driving force in our lives? What gets us up in the morning? What causes us perhaps to write and to do other things? I mean, intrinsic motivation is an incredibly important thing, and that doesn't get fostered enough in human beings, make no mistake. And that's the real power, for an individual, I think. But, within the social realm, within the community, within the realm of the community or, the union of egoists or the group or whatever. I mean, honestly, in a lot of ways, it can be, with human interaction, within the human condition, it can come down to, that kind of like that desire for recognition, for, reputation, good reputation, or maybe you want a bad reputation. I mean, some people do, all of that. So, how do you get to that? Well, I mean, you have, I mentioned Charles Eisenstein earlier. A lot of people talk about gift economies, that could be a very powerful thing where literally giving is based upon gift. Understand though, or is based upon gifting something. And, Eisenstein goes into how, this is like just an ancient way of doing things. Understand though, the gift, even the gift itself comes with this building of reputation for another person. So there's still a currency there, right? It's not money. It's not something, there's not a physical medium of exchange that's being exchanged, but there is that reputation. So, gift economies are an interesting idea. Certainly. I don't think that what the Incas were doing was actually a very good thing. I only ever bring it up because I just want to prove to people that, guess what? I mean, and that, the time tax is effectively socialism. Well, look, there was a time where, it was tyrannical, but there was a time where actually, socialism seemed to work very well, that there was no money. There was, Karl Marx probably would have been proud. I don't know. Even though, Marx wouldn't have liked the monarchy about it, but whatever. So, gift economy is one thing, with Star Trek. You get there because you have what is effectively, a post-scarcity economy. It's not really post-scarcity. And you kind of get the hints that there must be, like in the background, there still must be some things that are scarce, but just that nobody really wants those things. The other thing that you notice in Star Trek, not, like buying things for status, or like to show off doesn't really seem to be a thing anymore, at least not so much. Picard still loves having his, archaeological, artifacts from his archaeological digs and all the stuff. Right. But, like there's no point, in Star Trek, there's no BMWs versus a Yugo, right? There's no BMWs versus a Hyundai. Like everything's just a BMW, so that eliminates, I think, some of the need perhaps for a medium of exchange is when, there's no more, what would that be? Conspicuous purchases, or audacious purchases or something like that. Okay. I want to wrap this up because I have another question I want to get to, and then I want to do the album of the week. So bottom lining it, yes, I can picture a world without money. Okay. I cannot picture a world without currency. Like I said, I think that kind of that social currency, of, recognition, reputation, all of that would still be there. Like it's absolutely going, to be there. And that doesn't, wanting a good reputation or wanting to be recognized for an incredible feat of some kind, like there's nothing greedy or inherently wrong with that. I mean, I guess it can get to a level of greed, but that's okay. So how do we get to that? Well, again, like I said, I mean, there's some alternative models. I mean, you really have to get to the point. I mean, maybe you have to get to the point where, you're in like a post-scarcity economy, but maybe that'll never exist. Or maybe people, one thing, a change of mindset would do it. I mean, if people got over the fact that, I don't need I don't care if more people, I guess what could happen is you could have a change of mindset. And look, folks, I'm not saying what's right or wrong in any of this. I'm trying to just objectively say how this stuff could come into fruition. Okay. I'm not saying that I have a problem with money or anything like that. I'm really trying to just describe all this stuff from all sides as best I can here. Okay. But people could have a change of mindset to where, having flashy things doesn't matter anymore. And we see precedent for that as well. I mean, there's a bunch of different examples. Some are, maybe not as palatable as others. I mean, but you have, the Amish, like they willfully choose not to have the flash, and I mean, they have a lot of little cultural rules, even around like getting to the point of of high art, where they even kind of shun that. And yet they continue on and thrive and, whatever. So yeah, you might not think they're thriving, but okay, that's definition. We don't have to go down that. But yeah, I mean, just a change in mindset on what's important, to people, that could certainly happen to where those sorts of things aren't necessary anymore. I mean, not needing to impress other people with your purchases. Like if that kind of, if that mindset sort of went away, yeah, I think money loses a lot of power, and a lot of utility even at that point. So yeah, but let's be clear here, regardless of how you feel about money, it is, but considering some cryptocurrencies, but it really was, I mean, just one of the greatest inventions ever. And we can argue back and forth on whether or not, how helpful it really was at the end of the day. I know I have listeners that are primitivists, okay, or at least they're trying to be. And, I'm open to those arguments. I really am. And I actually understand a lot of them. And I think there's some valid points to be made, within that. But at the same time, let's just be clear. It's a remarkable invention. Like whoever came up with it, I don't know that they even knew what they had done, but I mean, and this is something else I've talked about many times. I mean, when you look at, like the first writings and everything, the first writings were like bills of sale, it was all monetary, where it was just, tracking, okay, this person made an exchange, for this much, blah, blah, blah. This person bought this, and whatever. So yeah, I mean, they're part and parcel. Like, I think the rise of civilization, a lot of that really probably did come from, the creation of the monetary unit. Okay. Not of currency. Currency already existed, right? Currency, I mean, and I know that's kind of my own definition, that currency is like this intangible, or can be, I mean, currency can be money too, but currency can also be this very intangible thing like social currency, which is not my invention. Or not, that's not something I came up with. But money, I think money is straight up, I think that should be defined as like this very physical thing or physical or digital thing that you can actually exchange, as to where currency can be something very ephemeral. So anyway, okay. Did 48 minutes on that. I hope what I said made sense, and I hope I answered those questions to satisfaction. Like I said, I had a few people asking me about that. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to live a life without money, maybe you get a community together where it's not part of the program. Hey, I'm not going to stop you. Okay. Go for it. Just, unfortunately you won't be able to listen to Patreon episodes. Sorry. So, anyway. Okay. Let's tell you what, let's do album of the week now, and then we'll get into another question. But let's let's shake it up here. So, all right, album of the week. I actually had somebody ask me about this, saying they knew I was a fan of 80s metal, and so they asked me what did I think about this certain band, that being Steel Panther. Now, Steel Panther is a unique metal band, admittedly. Like, I mean, well, they're not so unique anymore. There's others that have kind of followed their shtick, but they started, oh boy, I think they started around like 2000. They've had a few different names. Like, I actually saw them perform once, but at the time they were called Metal School. And they play a lot, Sunset Strip, the whole thing, they really, they're an homage. Originally, before like 2012, maybe 2010, something like that. Or I guess, no, that would have been like 2008 when Field of Steel came out. Okay. So so it would have been around there. Originally, they're just like a tribute band. Okay. And they were just like but they were not just a tribute in song, but tribute in performance, concert, style, the whole thing. All right. They were kind of carrying the flame of 80s, what gets called hair metal, which I think is a terrible description of it, because it allows people to just kind of write off what is really incredible music, from bands like Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and, a bunch of those others, and Poison, whoever else. And, the question asker was accurate in that, yes, obviously, yeah, I'm a huge fan of this kind of music. It's probably my number one genre of music. I could go back and forth of whether or not it'd be soundtracks, because I love soundtracks, and I mean scores, not like, yeah, if it's a song written for a movie and it's relevant to the movie, like those are really cool too. Like you think of, like the work that Stan Bush did for, Kickboxer or Bloodsport, or something like that, like where the songs really match part of it. Yeah, I'm a fan of those too, but something that sets a tone of visual action that's going on. Soundtracks are very unique in what they deliver and present, even though sometimes you could just listen to them, without ever having seen the movie, and, oh, wow, this is really, creating such and such emotions within me, which is exciting. But outside of soundtracks, yep, 80s metal, it's what it's all about. And so, all right, the album I'm actually going to recommend to you is Field of Steel. And Field of Steel was actually their first real, like, big time major label studio album that Steel Panther came out with. Again, so, all right, I didn't explain this very well, but and this is when you listen to Field of Steel, you'll realize it right away. If you've never seen Steel Panther or listened to them before, while they're an homage to the 80s, they're an homage in a way that they're comedic. Like they're kind of playing up that this notion that what bands were doing in the 80s was like ridiculous. Like it was just too over the top. It was cheesy. It was too much, blah, 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 which I think is bullshit. Okay. Because again, that's part of what allows, various, music fans and music journalists and whatever else to just like try and write off all of that great music that came out in the 80s. So they have, their music is kind of, it's meant to be sort of a joke. Like it's meant to be funny, not like, it's almost like a Weird Al kind of thing. But it's original music instead of, Weird Al just, kind of borrowing from whatever famous song is out there at the time. And let's see. So Field of Steel, which was their first album. Now they came out with a music video for, I think it might be the first track on it, which is Death to All But Metal. And they kind of cracked, like they're making a joke within it about, cause like, and it's in the music video, you hear the joke where it's death, where the person keeps thinking, I think it's actually Sarah Silverman, where she keeps saying, yeah, I agree with you. Death to all but metal, which might be cracking a joke about butt rock. Like it might be a jab at what's called butt rock, like Nickelback and all those other, which I love a lot of those bands myself. Breaking Benjamin, all that, or, whoever gets tied up as butt rock. Saliva, I'm a huge Saliva fan. It might have been a jab at them, but whatever. Anyway, it's not meant to be taken seriously, but it's a pretty kick-ass song. I actually really like the song Death to All But Metal. What is it? Hell's on Fire, Stripper Girl, Fat Girl. Like there's a lot, there's some, I mean, it's funny shit. Like, it's really sleazy, and it's, some of it's very offensive, like, kind of on the order of like Tenacious D and stuff like that. But yeah, I dig it. I do get it. And Field of Steel is, they've had like 3 or 4 albums. In fact, they just had an album come out this year, or just like the past month, called Lower the Bar. And they're all pretty good, but Field of Steel is still the best one, in my opinion. They were definitely, that's an old saying in the music business, that it's easy to make one album. It's tough to do the second, third, or fourth, because the first album, you're just putting everything you've got into it. Like, your entire life's, work in music ends up going into your first album. And this seems to be the case with Steel Panther. Now, again, I like the music, but I do have a problem with this overall. Let me explain what that is that because they are being comedic, because they are being like kind of a parody of bands like, say, Motley Crue and others, I think a lot of people like their music because it is making fun of these 80s bands, which I don't think need to be made fun of. Like, I think, Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Poison and Danger and Trickster and Winger and all these other guys, I mean, that was deadly serious music, and it was fucking good. I mean, it was about a good time, understand, not that it was like necessarily like about serious subjects, but they were serious. Like, they were, what they were playing, what they were singing about, they were doing. And that's why 80s metal had such success. That's why anything has success, is when it's authentic. Well, not anything, but you have a better chance of success if what you're saying, what you're doing, what you're putting out there is very authentic. And 80s metal was. It's one of my biggest problems with metal today, is that, well, maybe it's authentic, but obviously the bulk of the singers, singing metal music today, who are singing about killing themselves and how everything's horrible, blah, 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 are living it up, in mansions and whatever else. And I don't have a problem with that, but they're living it up, and they're alive and singing. So they're not doing what their songs say. Right. Not that you have to, with every song has to accurately represent life, and that you can't go into the fantastical or the dramatic. Of course you can. But it just, I think, I don't get why this shit resonates with people, with so much of the, like, the really depressing shit, and like with the really, like, really harsh lyrics. Like, I don't understand why, the necessary attraction to that, like, fuck, like, wouldn't you rather listen to music about having a good time? I guess that's just me. But anyway, so my problem with Steel Panther is that they're popular. Like, they sell albums. They do well when their albums come out. But it's because it's making fun of something that, again, there's no reason to make fun of it. And they can say, "Oh no, we're paying tribute. No, you're fucking ripping on it. Galaxy Quest, that's paying tribute to Star Trek, right? Like, that's an example where you're really paying tribute. But because at the end of the day, there's still some serious notes to be had there. But with Steel Panther, everything is fucking comedy. And that's okay. But 80s metal already has a problem of not being respected as real music and as authentic and as, the fine art. And it is the fine art that it is. So as much as I love Steel Panther, at the same time, like, they annoy the hell out of me, because they're making light of something that there's no reason to make light of, and that too many people already do make light of. Like, I don't know. I'm glad that they're doing well. They're making money, but I mean, and you never, like, that's the other thing too, is that Steel Panther has to always be in fucking character. Okay. So, the lead singer and whoever else, they can't just like come out and say, and do an interview and say, "No, motherfucker," like, say Whitesnake was awesome. Right. And be serious about it. The journalists would just laugh, thinking that they're in character and just kind of cracking a joke when, so it doesn't help. It doesn't, I mean, cause that's another thing. I know there's a lot of metal fans that are like, well, Steel Panther is the only thing really keeping the flame alive for 80s metal. No, they're actually extinguishing it faster than anything else. They really are. You want to talk about bands that are keeping the 80s metal, shit alive? Let's talk about Absolute Steel. Let's talk about Kissin' Dynamite. Woo, Kissin' Dynamite. Airborne. Holy fuck. Talk about a great band. Who else is out there right now? I already mentioned Kissin' Dynamite. I mean, of course, most of the bands from the 80s are still around because they had actual talent, unlike a lot of the people today, to where like they could have that kind of a longevity in their music. Boy, I think that there was a band that I was thinking of and then I lost it, but definitely, Airborne is obviously a big one. Kiss and Dynamite is huge. They're so good. They've had Megalomania was a great album. They're Addicted to Metal, which is their first album. That was fantastic. Their second one, Money, Sex, Power, fantastic. Their last album that they came out with, their fourth one, wasn't so impressed with it as far as Kiss and Dynamite goes. But those are the bands that are really carrying the torch because, they're trying to live it up and there's, their music is kind of serious in what it's presenting, even though it's about, sometimes very humorous or, very good, good time stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on Steel Panther. I love them. I thought Lower the Bar was a good album. It wasn't, none of them have been as good as Field of Steel, but yeah, I'm just pissed off that I think the reason they're popular is with everybody is because it's making fun of this time. And like, I want to be empathetic with people too. Like most people's lives, they're not living it up like people did in the 80s, and people really did fucking live it up back then, Like, I mean, there's a reason the party could finally get made public, with like what Motley Crue would be singing or whatever, because everybody else was having the same party and all that. And boy, I could get into such a side tangent about this, but I won't. So anyway, there you go. So Steel Panther, that's my thoughts on it. I love them, but just there is like this really, really, there's this looming black cloud over what they do, in my opinion, and that black cloud, which ends up covering the rest of the style of music that they perform, which is very unfortunate. So, but I'm not going to blame them for it. They're being opportunists. I get it. Okay. So let's move on to another question here. And all right, here we go. I won't spend long on this, but I mean, I don't really have that much to say anyway. This is kind of a follow-up to what I had talked about, something I had talked about. This is from a patron. It was a question asking about, like, it seemed like I was buying Netflix because I wanted to watch Dear White People and all this. And I talked about how, I did it to piss people off. Like, all the people are like, I can't believe Dear White People. I'm canceling my Netflix subscription because beforehand I hated Netflix. Like I was so against that model. I mean, and in fact, and I know I have listeners that consider themselves to be Marxist, but like really folks, if you're taking advantage of a Netflix account, you're a fucking commie. Yes, you are. So there you go. We're all communists now. All right. Including me, because now I have a Netflix account. But that's the nature of the sharing economy. I mean, anyway, that's another conversation to be had. But all right. So Netflix. And the question was just, how am I feeling about it after having it for a couple months? Interesting. Where is Dear White People? When the fuck was that supposed to come out? Because I haven't seen it yet. I'm enjoying it straight up. Like I still have like some of my initial complaints about it are still true. Like trying to find actual content that isn't Netflix content or isn't something from just last year is like that content seems to just be nil. Like it's not there. And that annoys me because, but let me finish because there's a caveat to this, is that it really, like Netflix is now, in my opinion, reinforcing one of my big problems with entertainment. And that is that people have no sense of history. They don't watch the classics, which are still great, which are still good. Blake 7 is still good. Babylon 5 is still fucking awesome. So much other shit. Who would argue that The Next Generation is like a bad show? Look, the show's what, 30 years old now? Or 20, right, 1987. So yeah, it's 30 years old. Guess what? There's other shows from 30 years ago that are maybe not that great, but they're damn close. I mean, and they are damn close. So that annoys the hell out of me when, and I get it. I mean, pretty much all of these companies, every entertainment company really feels this way, that there's no money to be had in the past, and that unless it's a remake or something, right, that you're doing. It's a pity, but anyway, so I'm still annoyed by that like that a lot of the stuff that I know was on Netflix, years ago, just isn't there anymore. And it's a lot of stuff. It's not like just one or two things. Like, I mean, it's almost everything I can think of is not on Netflix. I understand why that is. I get the package deals that they buy and all that Netflix themselves buys, from distributors. I understand. I totally fucking get it. Okay. You don't have to email me about how Netflix works. I know. I just don't like it. So anyway, that said, the new content that they are coming out with is phenomenal. Voltron, which I've reviewed on Sovereign Tech Prime, incredible. Voltron Legendary Defender. And recently, and this is really wild, I've enjoyed the hell out of this. Recently, they came out with they're calling it Voltron 84, where they took select episodes and they had like the creative team behind Voltron Legendary Defender pick out certain episodes. And supposedly they put in some classic scenes. I've yet to contrast and compare them, but I will at some point, to see what exactly was added. And I haven't seen anybody online post about what new scenes were added into it anyway, because of course Voltron is based upon, Beast King, Go Lion, and depending on which one, what was it, Armor Digger or something. I forget what vehicle Voltron was based on, something like that. Yeah. So, I mean, there is other animation that they could grab hold of, but they can't just like add things in because you'd have to use the same voice actors and everything. So I'm still not 100% clear on what they've done with Voltron 84 on Netflix. They have added in interviews and like some interesting little graphics and stuff, before and after an episode, but I don't know exactly what they added in, but that was the claim, is that they were putting in deleted scenes. Well, okay. So, but that's cool. Like to give a cartoon like that the royal treatment, which they really are, this real red carpet treatment on Netflix is amazing. And there's a lot of other original content that, not that Netflix is necessarily producing, but they're buying it, they're optioning it, to play only on Netflix and all that. And so, yeah, I get it. Netflix is a tremendous value. The only place where its value sucks is in that if you want to watch anything of the classics that isn't related to a remake or a reboot or a restart of something that they have going on, or a continuation or whatever, you can't find it. You can't find the classics. You can't find all the good old stuff. Even though I guess all of Star Trek's probably on there. Yeah, so I'm for Voltron alone, like I am actually, like, especially like with what they did with Voltron 84 and all that. I'm actually kind of honored to be paying for a Netflix subscription. So I've been very pleased with that. Overall, I don't watch it like that often. There's a few documentaries here and there that I've watched on it. Certainly, I don't make it a point to watch like every show that seems to come out on Netflix. I don't rely upon Netflix for. I mean, Netflix still takes up like 2% of the entertainment that I consume, as to where I think for a lot of other people, it's like 90 or 95. Like it's probably, for a lot of people, I think it is like their entire gateway, and they'll just watch whatever new show comes out on it. I consume very little. I still torrent I may still torrent everything. I don't want to confirm or deny that. But anyway, so I've been pleased with Netflix. I'm not really going to rip on it anymore. I think it's kind of funny to rip on people for using it, because it is, after a fashion, it very much is communism. And yeah, I mean, this is the company to beat. I know for years, a lot of people were talking about how, Apple will probably buy Netflix, or someone else will buy Netflix. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Netflix could really, how to put this? Well, I don't see Netflix ever releasing like a standalone product of some kind, because I think there's a very subtle brilliance in the fact that, like, there's a reason. I think there's a very good reason, and Netflix is totally behind it, why there is a Netflix app for fucking everything. Like, for literally everything, they make sure that there's a Netflix app. Reason being is they get to collect a whole ton of data. They might have the most user data of any other company in the world. I mean, they have to have tons. And so that's why they want it everywhere. They want it Trojan horsing everywhere. So I can't really see them ever doing like a standalone device. I don't know how exactly their business could ever evolve. Really, the only way I think that they could ever make more money is by increasing the monthly subscription fee. And they're getting to the point where their Netflix original content, I think could make it worth it for them to start charging, like, say, $15 a month. I mean, and I know there's HD packages that already cost that, but, yeah. I mean, they're a juggernaut. I don't really personally right now, I don't see any company ever like thinking that they could buy them out. And I don't see Netflix getting into any kind of financial trouble really, at any point, because it'd be so easy, even to just add 50 cents to every account that people already have would save their business instantly, I would think. So I'm very pleased with my Netflix account. I won't be trash talking them much anymore. Again, and it is due to, my appreciation for, like, if they just, and, I was already digging Voltron, but when they did the Voltron 84 thing, I was just like, yeah, that's awfully big of you. Like, that's really cool of you to recognize, that this has a history and this comes from somewhere, and you put the best of that history on display. And I thought that was because, the episodes are handpicked that they put out there for that. And I thought that was a real class act. Cause I get annoyed as fuck when people ignore history, whether that's in entertainment or anywhere else. So, or economics, like we were just talking about earlier in this episode. Yeah. If you don't have a Netflix account, if you're kind of on the fence about it, or if you just want to keep torrenting the shit, I understand that. But if you're on the fence, I'd say, yeah, rock and roll. What the hell? I mean, and if it ends up killing a lot of the cable companies, and offing them, I mean, great, and that's an area where I think Netflix, if they have the money, it would behoove them to create their own alternative internet infrastructure. I mean, that's a huge thing to do. But the interesting thing about Netflix is that it very much can be a one-way street. It doesn't so much need to be a two-way street. So, you could create a tailor-made, data infrastructure for that, to work. And I think it'd be a lot better than if, like, say, Facebook creating its own infrastructure, which they are, or, Google or Apple, all of which I think they are all in that business in some form or other. So anyway, all right, that's it for this week. I already went long on this episode. Like I said, other more controversial content to come out this week. And I've got some great stuff I'll be recording as well, extra, and just got some dynamite. No new Sex and Science Hour this week. There will not be one. But when we come back with Sex and Science Hour, I guarantee it's going to be a good time. There will be. Sovereign Tech comes out new every fucking week. Don't you worry about that. I'll be here for you Saturday. And like I said, other content coming out. Woo! I'll see you on the other side. And thank you so much. I mean this. Thank you for being a patron. Some of you have been patrons for like a year now. I mean, ever since I started. Thank you so much for that. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.